I only had a brain. We're going to talk about that today. So this is the second part of a four-part series that we are exploring, and it's the exploration of the metaphysical New Thought perspective or interpretation, if you will, of The Wizard of Oz, a movie that we saw last week. So it's fresh in my mind. Really awesome, classic, as you know, movie. So today we're going to be speaking about two of the beloved characters in that movie. We're going to talk about the Tin Man and the Scarecrow. In the context of this sentence opener, this is like full of death. This is like the one that the ego loves this. It's like, if I only had a brain, if I only had a heart, if I only had, and you can fill in the blank. Because I know that during our lives, we might have said something like that. Oh, if I only had this job, I would be this. If I only had this amount of money, I'd be. There's always something there. There's a lot around us from early on in life that tells us that we don't have enough, that we are not enough. And that's what The Wizard of Oz, that's the beauty of that movie, really gets into. And it's not only maybe our parents, race consciousness, that's the collective thought, but even religions tell us we're not enough. And God, that we have an empowering, this is a religion, a science, and a philosophy. Thank God we have this to open us up to the infinite potential that we really are. We're so much more than we really believe. And that's the truth. That is the truth. We come to believe in the power sometimes of circumstances than in the power of God at work. The divinity that we are. We believe more in the outside appearances than what we truly are within. Turning within and really connecting with all of that beauty and power and wisdom and love that we really are. Whenever you stop, whatever you think you still need in life, something you think has more power than God, just stop and think about this one. Just think about it. That we believe that there is more in the circumstances outside of ourselves. And that's the separation that is so huge that we talk about. It's what we think we need or we're missing. Something's missing in our lives that brings us to a place of fear instead of focusing on the infinite possibilities that are always around us. Yesterday we went into Manhattan, a few of us, and we saw Martha Creek, if you're familiar with her work. She is amazing. She's absolutely amazing. I mean, to drive up to 99th Street in Manhattan, someone better be amazing. And God bless Barbara Mary for taking that ride with me. It was quite an adventure driving with Margaret through Manhattan, I must say. So fear, I hopefully got pushed aside through some pretty hairy things. But the interesting thing is I had to go a route that I never went before over the GW Bridge and get off. And then my sister was with us, and I had to drop her somewhere in Washington Heights. Now, I know downtown, I know Midtown, I know Uptown. I don't know Washington Heights. So I made up my mind. This just shows you the power of thought, that even before we got there, that this was not a good idea. This was not a good idea to drop her on this 174th Street. This was not a good idea. And what I noticed in the middle of this workshop was what I manifested, the exact thing that I feared. That I was going to make the wrong turn, and I don't know 174th Street real well. Well, it's all basically easy. It's Amsterdam, Broadway, and those avenues. But it was interesting how I manifested the very thing that I kept thinking about. I wasn't, and it was so easy. It was so easy to do what I did. It was easy. I know Manhattan. But the thoughts The thoughts that I'm going to get lost, or I'm not going to do this right. So we think that we're missing something, and this came through with the Martha Creek work, which is so the Byron Katie work, if you're familiar with that. And it really puts it right in your face and in your lap. Instead of focusing on the possibilities in every situation, we're focusing on what could go wrong. That's what I did. I focused on what could go wrong when it was the easiest thing on earth, when I sat there in the workshop and I'm doing the work, and I'm like, oh my God, I had to text Kathleen and say, hey, forgive me for my testiness, you know, in dropping you off. I basically shoved her out of the car. No, I didn't. Anyway, back to stop. So, this morning we're going to look at two great spiritual teachers. That's what we're going to do this morning. The Scarecrow and the Tin Man. They taught us that we already have everything we think is missing in our lives. We already have it. We just have to keep training ourselves. We have to keep going within and believing that. So the Scarecrow says, if I only had a brain, I'd know what to do. He thinks he doesn't know what to do. But for someone who insists that they don't know what to do and they cannot think, the Scarecrow has given a lot of thought to what he would do if he only had that brain. And if you recall the song that we just heard, I'd think of things I never thought before. And then I'd sit and think some more. And so he wants to have a brain that when he asks Dorothy, he can actually accompany her to the Emerald City. Dorothy tried to dissuade him from that because he wants to get brains from the wizard, right? And she warns him that there's a very wicked witch that's after me, so you would be in grave danger. And the Scarecrow says, witch? I'm not afraid of any witch. He insists, I'm not afraid of anything. I can see him in my head now because I just saw a movie, except a lighted match. But I'd face a whole box of matches to just get that brain. As Dorothy and her companions nervously follow that yellow brick road, they are going through this dark forest, if you remember the forest, very creepy. And the Scarecrow says, of course, I don't know, but I think the darkness always comes before the light. And the Scarecrow is really actually, in that statement, offering us one of the deepest philosophical truths that we could really grasp. It truly does seem the darkest before the dawn. As it says this in the Tao Te Ching, the path into light seems dark. As we're going through, that pathway in between feels really dark. But then we come out into the light of infinite possibilities of the truth of our being. How could a brainless Scarecrow say something so insightful? Nature's intelligence flows freely and effortlessly through each and every one of us. It truly does. When you are in harmony with this spiritual truth, this creative intelligence of the cosmos that created everything that is, was, and ever could be. It's created everything that is. You can harness the full potential of the universe. We can do that. Each and every one of us has that power to channel that infinite intelligence. Remember, and I say it all the time, because there's only one mind, that's God's mind, that's my mind now. We need to remind ourselves of that in all situations, like I did yesterday. I had to remind myself. I had a divine navigational system already set to go. There ain't no way I was going to get lost, and if I did, so what, right? They're going down a yellow brick road into the great unknown. And if you've been stuck, this is back to the Scarecrow, on a pole in the middle of a cornfield with the crows pecking at you, let it go. Sometimes you just got to let it go and free that energy, rechannel that energy, and allow it to manifest itself in much more meaningful ways. Sometimes it feels like we're hanging up and we're getting pecked at all the time. And that's, just let it go. Let it go. To acquire anything you desire, release the "if I only had" attitude. Simply keep your attention on the here and now. Martha really got into that. And you know, we had to write a list of negative thoughts. And in her mind, you know, negative, positive, it's all part of the same thing. So as I got to the end of the workshop, she said, go back and look at what you wrote. And what struck me was everything that I wrote, that it was all based in fear, was based on the future. Not one thing, and think about the stuff that you're afraid of, that you fear most in life. Most of it is stuff that's not taken place. But we think about it. Well, this could happen, and if only. And so that keeps us in that fear-based thinking. But when we come back to the here and now, that's when the infinite potential and limitless possibilities really exist. So the scarecrow craves intelligence, which assumes he doesn't have any, because that's what he wants. It escapes him, but when he lets go of his preoccupation with obtaining a brain, he becomes a quick problem solver. He becomes the quickest out of everyone. When Dorothy can't figure out how to get him down from the pole, wasn't it he that said, oh, you might want to reach around and just bend the nail down a little bit and I'll slide right off of it? She did. He thought of that. Oh, remember the apples? So Dorothy couldn't get an apple from this forest of apple trees. And so the scarecrow thinks he was going to antagonize the trees so they would throw the apples at them. And so there they had the food, they had the apples. It was the scarecrow's thinking. When the doorman at Emerald City wouldn't let them in, he would not let them in when they arrived until they could prove that the good witch had sent them. And the only one that can think of a solution was the scarecrow, who said, look at her ruby red slippers. The good witch gave them to her, at which point they let him into the Emerald City. It was all the scarecrow who didn't have a brain. Instant after instant, that scarecrow uses the innate intelligence he doesn't think he has. Don't we do that? We think we don't have it, and we do. We have so much more than we can ever realize. The scarecrow is an exquisite example to anyone who feels intellectually inadequate. Anyone that says, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough. When you trust the power of your innate nature, that intelligence is part of who you are. And we know things instinctively. We might not know all of the dates and names, and then we compare ourselves to those kinds of people that do, but we have an intelligence that's instinctual. We have a 6th century BC philosopher, Lao Tzu, when he wrote this: when you look for it, there is nothing to see. When you listen for it, there's nothing to hear. But when you use it, it is inexhaustible. It is infinite, it is always present, it is always with us. That is the truth of our being. And that's for us to really move into and to believe. More than anything, to believe it. How many times a day do you say, I don't know? I don't know. I don't know. When something inside of you really does know. I mean, there are some things like we might not know, but most of the time we say, I don't know, when really we do know. If we would just stop for a second and turn within and just think, say what we are feeling and thinking within. At the core of this message is a deep belief, a very deep belief that we are separate from God. We believe that we're separate from God, and we're saying, I don't know, like it's a prayer. It's a prayer that's affirming that you don't know. That's what that is. And instead you might ask, what would you do if you did know? What would you do if you did know? We are standing in a vast sea of infinite potential. All of us. It's always present. We are in it. We are it. The rational mind, that ego mind, wants to know it all. It wants to know everything, every little minute detail. And when it doesn't know it, it says, I don't know. When we probably do know. The intuitive mind, however, is willing to say just what it does know, if we listen to that. A great illustration in a Herman comic book a while ago is about two mice who are looking at a piece of cheese in a mousetrap. As one had his hand poised over that cheese to take it, the other one says, I don't know, I got a funny feeling about this. You see, the point of that little comic strip is that intuitively we know. Intuitively we know. We say I don't know all the time, but something inside of us does. So what would happen in your life if you said I know instead of I don't know? Or if I did know, what would I do? So this week when you hear yourself constantly saying, I don't know, oh, I don't know that, I don't know, use it as a reminder that in this present moment you probably are disconnected from your internal intelligence. And all the wisdom you need, all the answers you need are always within you. Have you ever noticed that? Every answer you need is always within you when you really get to the point. Like yesterday, it's a great example. I knew where I was, but my mind had told me I didn't know where I was. I know those avenues. But I was convinced that I didn't know them. I don't know. I did know. So using that intuitive intelligence, it was a no-brainer to get to where we had to go. Ernest Holmes wrote this beautiful affirmation in the Science of Mind magazine a number of years ago. I know that today I walk in full understanding of my oneness with God. God is at the center of my being, and from this center I receive inspiration, which governs my every thought, every act with certainty, love, and peace. And now we get to the Tin Man. I like them all. I can't pick a favorite. I like all of them. What does he want? What does the Tin Man want? He wants a heart, right? What do most of us want more than anything? To love and be loved. Yeah? That's that thing that we think is missing. We think it's missing. Once again, the challenge we have on our journey, this human journey that we're on, is thinking something's missing. But he, like the scarecrow, showed that he was really filled with love. The Tin Man was so compassionately, unconditionally loving. Remember when the wicked witch threatened to stuff a mattress with the scarecrow when they got to her scary castle? And used the Tin Man for a beehive unless the two stayed away from trying to help Dorothy? And she threw a ball of fire at the straw man. And who was it that saved the day? It was the Tin Man. It was the Tin Man. He slammed his hat down on the fireball to extinguish it. A pure, selfless act of love. That's what that was. It was the Tin Man who insisted that he will get Dorothy to the wizard. He insisted on that. Whether he got a heart or not, that's true compassion. That's altruism at its finest. He was thinking of everyone else before himself. Without knowing it, the Tin Man touches everyone he comes in contact with. with his love, with his kindness. An important point here is he couldn't activate the innate love until he got some unconditional love from Dorothy, who loved him unconditionally, which came in the form of what? What do you think it came in the form of? An oil can. An oil can. If we are frozen in fear, how many of you have been frozen in fear? Yeah, once in a while. We need to take out our love pump and we need to prime it up. That's what we need to do to receive some unconditional love. First, so that we can then flow. We can then move. And we can begin the whole reciprocal process of the whole loving thing. It's just be yourself, but be kind. Even though Martha Creek said there's no such thing as kindness. Kindness and unkindness are the same thing. It's very interesting. Love is a life force. Love is a life force that must continue circulating. It has to circulate. So if you want to keep that loving energy coming to you, love more. We know this, we hear this, but are we really doing this? Keep it in perpetual motion. And it is vitally important that you make certain that the intention behind your giving is selfless. Otherwise, it becomes manipulative and conditional. I'll give you this if something back in return. So when we are loving, it needs to be unconditional without any conditions. Your goal should always be to create happiness for your own sake. Because when you're creating that happiness for your own sake, you are spreading that atmosphere of love to all who come in contact with you. The most precious gifts you can give are spiritual. Spiritual, the appreciation, love, affection. Unwittingly, we are priming that love pump. We are giving and we are receiving. We are giving and we are receiving. There is a direct correlation between the depth and sincerity of love that you have for others and what you get in return. You're going to be in that flow. You know you feel good when you're appreciating other people, when you're in those kinds of flows. And they don't always have to be looking for something in return. However, the universe will respond. It will respond to the action and the feeling given. So if you're in that state of really appreciating people, doing things out of the kindness of your heart, it will come back. It's the law of circulation. It must come back what we give out. No one loves the wicked witch, right? Of the West. She's mean. She's got those flying monkeys, which I love. I love the flying monkeys. I have 2 flying monkey candle holders. I love the flying monkeys. But anyway, because she didn't have a smidgen of love in her. She didn't give anyone any love. Her motives were selfish and egocentric. The Wizard of Oz only loves so that he can stay in power. And so the love that he gives is insecure and conditional. And he is loved as long as he keeps Emerald City safe from the wicked witch. So throughout this story, the Tin Man, the one who didn't think he had a heart, it is he who loves unconditionally. That's who it is. The Tin Man shows us that if we want to be blessed with a heart, we must give from our heart. We must give from our heart. So how much you are loved by others is equal to how much you love. And that word love can bring up all kinds of definitions, but for me it really is about respect. It's about really appreciating and giving thanks. It's about being in that kind of a flow. So if you want to be blessed with love, you must give from your heart. Give and you shall receive, right? When you give from the heart, emphatically, unconditionally, and constantly without expecting anything in return, you receive happiness in abundance. So when people are in a depression or in a darker state of being, we say, make yourself. Go out and do something for someone else. The whole 12-step program is based on that. Go out and do something for someone else. Because in that doing, you will be receiving. It must be. It's the way it works. The Tin Man is expressing his perennial wisdom. It is in giving that we receive. When you put the goodness within you to work for another, when you decide to love for love's sake, not because the other one is doing something worthy of your love. When you learn to give of yourself without expecting anything in return, then the universe pushes and fills you with all the grace and all the goodness that you could ever want. So Ernest Holmes writes this in Science of Mind book, the one that Barb just read. If our concept of love and our belief in its beneficent presence is greater than our fear of the opposite, then we shall win. What are we believing in? Fear? Are we believing in that fear because it's not real? But we believe it is real because it feels real in our body. When are you stuck in your life, frozen in the yard like the Tin Man? Get loved first. Get loved first. Then rather than wishing and expecting from other people, from that day, then you are simply in that flow of that energy that is stuck. You see, the Tin Man was stuck. Remember, he couldn't move. And so for him to get unstuck, he needed an act of kindness. And that oil can that Dorothy oiled him with, then he woke up. And he could then be the loving kindness. And in my last talk, I quoted Michael Mirdad from his book, The 7 Initiations of the Spiritual Path, when he wrote this: the gift of awakening the heart center are beyond measure. As Charles Dickens wrote, a loving heart is the truest wisdom. The opening of the heart center is synonymous with the quickening of the soul. It is not something that can be faked or contrived, nor is it fleeting or temporary, he wrote. The love of an open heart center is real, authentic, and powerful. Truly is. So, divine intelligence and infinite love. Those were the two qualities of these two characters in The Wizard of Oz. Two eternal qualities they were both looking for but had the whole time. They had them, right? The whole time. I'd like to end with this poem by Russ Kuhn. It encapsulates some of these ideas. He writes this: here I am, saying I am that I am. Therefore, I begin to realize I am centered in love. I am surrounded by beauty. I am filled with joy. I am tapping the infinite intelligence. I am the unceasing energy that is atomic power. I am the wisdom of the universe, and therefore I am of God. The key is, however, when will I fully accept the great I am? It's when we start to accept it. So how about today? It's a good day to start. Can't start tomorrow. You can't start yesterday, correct? So how about starting today? And then taking a lesson from the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and realizing you already have within you all that you need. You have it. No one can give it to you, by the way. Not really give it to you. Only you can activate it. Only you can live it. No one else can live your life. You can't live anyone else's life. So I say it's today that we start to really get in touch with all the worthiness we are inside, all the love we are inside, all the intelligence we are inside, because truly we really have it sitting there. It's activated.